Palestinians, but saw its duty as sort of carving out territory, which had to be then, the Palestinians had to be removed, or a kind of slave class. And this is a mentality of colonial secularism that sadly was in America when people saw the American Indians as trouble. They just had them uprooted and did the Trail of Tears to Oklahoma and so on. And it's the same mentality. And it's the same idea of the chosen people, the righteous people, who therefore have a right to rule it over the unrighteous people, the pagans. This is what we have to grow out of, I think. And it seems to me the nightmare of Gaza is the sort of, I hope it's the kind of the last episode of this nonsense. We have to realise that we're all one people, that Palestinians and Syrians and Jews and Muslims and Christians and pagans, we all have equal rights on this planet. We need some kind of spiritual democracy whereby each culture, each religion is equally sacred. Ilan Pappé also is talking about how the roots of it go back even further to the 19th century in Europe, and it was tied to this kind of Christian idea that Christ is going to come back and save the world. So let's carve out a sort of place in the Holy Land where that can happen. So these Christian evangelical, he calls them, I don't think that's quite the right word, kind of Christian proto-Zionists were, and they were part of the British imperial attack in Palestine and conquering it from the Ottoman Empire. Instead of just letting them be and doing their thing as they'd done for hundreds of years quite peacefully, and there was a good Jewish community living in Palestine already. The Ottoman Sultan welcomed them when they were kicked out of Spain and had no anti-Jewish tendencies. The Ottomans were very liberal in that sense. What Ilan Pappé is doing is saying no. It was this weird kind of Christian idea of the end of the world. We're going to have a last judgment. Christ's going to come. That gave this. It coincided with the Zionist idea of let's go back and re-establish, the original Jewish homeland. I think those ideas all need deconstructing and repairing, as I was talking about before, through meditational work. When I went to Israel, I worked with a beautiful woman called Menorah, who introduced advanced meditational visualization practices into Israel for the first time. And I gave a talk to some of her students and things when she died about the Mayan calendar and the importance of 2012. I gave that talk in 2011, and I got this idea of reopening the Golden Gate, which is on the eastern wall of Jerusalem, as a symbolic, ceremonial opening of Temple Mount to all faiths, because Jews, Muslims and Christians are going to fight over this till the end of time. They're never going to agree, who should control that mount. So I'm saying let all the faiths of the world, all the spiritual pilgrims on the planet, build a peace tent, symbol of impermanence, and open the Golden Gate and all come in together, all the elders, spiritual leaders from every faith on the periodic table, and claim that space for all humanity in the same way that my Nepali intellectual wanted a universal humanism to prevail. I think we need to grow out of this idea, my tribe are going to conquer and rule, and we're going to control it, and we're going to destroy you. That to me is a false messianic idea. So then the question is, what is genuine? What is the genuine messianic idea? It has to be this inclusivism and a peace-based thing, which is why I set up WMASC, which is the World Messiahship, Avatar and Seoshant Council, which is a project of the World Intellectual Wisdom Forum. And the idea is to bring all the leading thinkers, spiritual elders, teachers from around the planet to agree a common project for planetary salvation, and to get away from this idea of it's going to be us. I noted Modi in his election canvassing was going around saying, I'm chosen by God, he meant Ram, the Hindu god, to control India. And it was very fanatical, so there's no room in that for the Muslims, 200 million people who follow Allah, or the Jains, who are a bit sceptical about gods. They know the trouble it's caused. There's millions of Jains in India. Or the millions of Buddhists, there are still lots of them. Or the millions of Christians, there are many Christians in India. And there are Baha'is, I've been to the Baha'i temple in Delhi, and there are many Zoroastrians who are profoundly beautiful people, and who've taken refuge in India for centuries. And there are Jews in India. I've met rabbis from different parts of India. You know, all these people they're also Indian, Mr. Modi, and so your God that you claim to rule in the name of, I think needs to go and do a philosophy class and learn that, you know, I think if Ram was around today, he'd be very disappointed in you. You know, what if you promote some ancient religious idea to then use it to terrorise and tyrannize over your fellow citizens? I think it's time to get an upgrade. You know, read Gandhi's work, because what Gandhi was trying to do was to upgrade Hinduism to a more tolerant, loving, compassionate variety, as was Nehru and you know his the people that followed Gandhi. So that's, yeah, I've been busy, but also I'm doing nothing at all, as Meister Eckhart said. You know, we just do what we can to channel wisdom. Which is beyond us. You know, the gods and goddesses transcend our capacity to comprehend them, really. That's why I think in Taoism you don't have a name for the Tao. It's the way things are. It's the flow. But having said which, of course, I have done my Tarot of the Gods. So what I thought we might do today, instead of going to the periodic table first, which we normally do, I'm going to go to the Universal Calendar of Saints and Sages, which I haven't in my prayers today. I didn't go through them. And I thought as we go through them, we'll look at where they would be on the table. Okay, so you can tell me which one, you know, and point to the boxes for the particular one. Yeah. So today is the 16th of June. You find the right page here. Gosh. Amazing. Page 143, right. So, okay, today we have in the column for women, we have a woman called Sophia Jex Blake, 1840 to 1912, who was a scientist, I believe of medicine. So where would that be on the periodic table?
At the bottom?
Yeah.
The humanism and medicine, maybe?
Yeah. What number is that?
Pup, 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 pup. 159.
Yeah. So it's lumped together with biology because, you know, they go together, modern medicine. And Aristotle, who was really the discoverer of biology, was from a medical background. I've talked about him before. And also sport goes in there because sport is part of health and keeping exercise and fitness and all that. And we're coming up to the Olympics, so it's really, you know, a great time here in France. And the Tour de France is going to be happening soon, which is another extraordinary bit of sport going on. So, yes, that's Sophia Jex Blake. The next one is our Freemason column. This is La Fiorello Guardia, 1882 to 1947. He was an American politician, a member of the Republican Party, and a Freemason, and he represented New York in Congress and then became mayor of New York 3 times between 1934 and 1945. And the airport in New York is called LaGuardia after him. He was a supporter of Franklin Delano Roosevelt's New Deal, which was unusual because the Republicans normally didn't like it, because Roosevelt was too much on the left for them. But this guy was an intelligent chap who realised that, you know, with the stock market crash and the horrors of America's unemployment and, you know, the Dust Bowl and so on, that something had to be done. And Roosevelt was the guy to do it. So this chap supported him. And Roosevelt was also a Freemason, so I don't know, maybe they were in the same lodge. Or the point of Freemasonry was to provide a social meeting space, whatever your politics, whatever your religion, so that you have a shared common humanity. Anyway, we honour him today. And then we have, for esoterics, we have, where would that be, by the way, the American Freemason guy? Which box?
First, I would like to thank you, because nowadays it's very difficult to put politicians as a saints. and so you prove it can exist.
Well, sages, saints and sages. Yeah.
Especially the mayor of New York.
I'm sure, you know, he wasn't probably a saint, but he did his best.
Yes,
think,
that
for the
no,
common
but that's
people.
great to honor this kind of people.
Yeah, yeah. Which box would it be in?
Yeah, for me, there is a kind of, I don't know where to put in this chart, is a kind of practical philosophy. You need, for me, philosophy, politics, true politics, they have a practical philosophy, because they help the community to build something.
Yeah.
And I don't know
Sure.
where you would like to put that kind of people.
Well, I think there's people doing practical stuff in all the boxes.
Theory is not so important.
Yeah.
What is important is make things done.
Sure. No, I think you'd find them in all. The Freemason guy is in box 117, if you look. He's in the column of esoteric Freemasonry.
Ah.
And he's from the American form, so that's 117, the deist types, who still have to believe in a great architect, a divine.
Okay.
Unlike the Freemasons in France, they don't have to, so they're next door in 116. But, you know, there have been practical people in the Buddhism or the Chinese or whatever, or Christians and so on. But no, I take your point. Okay, now we come to our esoteric column. Chap called F.C. Oettinger, a German mystic, Oettinger, lived from 1702 to 1782. He was a philosopher and a sage, really, who was sceptical about the claims of the Enlightenment. He thought there was a sort of, that human rationality can only reach so far, and that claims of, well, you know, I know it all, I'm enlightened and all that, were unpious, that we should keep a space for the fact that we're merely humans and we can't know everything. So he believed that only the mystic can go that further distance. Just to share something, one other thing I've been doing this week is watching the history of the Apollo 11 program. Incredible. The science that went into getting man on the moon, to me, is just, I'm watching this thing open mouth. This huge rocket, the Saturn V rocket, I think it was 2 million pounds in weight. Like, how is this possible? You know, were these people giants? And yet it went up in 3 stages. So Oettinger would say that reason can take you so far, like the Saturn heavy lifting, but then it pushes out another module, which is your sort of like theological stuff. And then even that one, it ejects a 3rd module, which is the bit that actually goes to the moon. And that travels at 27,000 miles an hour. That final module, hurtling to the moon at 27,000 miles an hour. Like, it's mind-boggling. How is this possible? But I think what Oettinger would say is that reason is the first stage of the rocket, but then you need the more mystical side to kick in. Anyway, he was very influential, and at a time when everybody had gone the rational route, following Kant and saying, you know, reason is the way, Kant said, well, reason can't get you to ultimate truth because it thinks in opposites. It has these antinomies, and they're always in opposition to each other. And that's just the way reason works. Well, Oettinger was part of okay, so what do we do next? Well, we have to go to Kant said you can never know the thing in itself. It's unknowable. So he leaves people in a sort of epistemic darkness. You can work through faith, said Kant, and you have to act as if there's a God, but you can never know that for absolute certainty. Oettinger said, oh yes you can, but you have to be prepared to go that extra distance. Anyway, he inspired a lot of very great thinkers in not just Germany, but all over Europe and even Britain. A few people had read him. And we were working out a similar kind of thing with people like Blake, and the criticism. Coleridge too, I think, read Oettinger, realising that mere reason isn't enough. Anyway, we honour him today. We also honour Banda Singh Bahadur, 1670 to 1717, a Sikh leader who took over after Guru Gobind Singh died, who was the 10th Guru, and the Sikhs needed someone, so he became their leader for a time. I've been to Amritsar and I greatly respect the Sikhs. We come to Shinto. Oh, where are the Sikhs?
Near Hinduism. Okay. Yes, 101 or 102.
Okay.
112.
Yeah, so there are two types.
Yes.
There's religious Sikhism and philosophical Sikhism. I think he'd be the religious type. The philosophical are more the kind of intellectuals. He was a leader, practical guy, and he was a military leader as well. Okay, now we come to the Shinto. Where are the Shintos?
It's the white one. No, green one.
Yeah, the dark green.
Yes.
Green as a Japanese pine tree, this was the theory, because they love nature so much. So that's boxes 90 and 91. Today we celebrate Nagatami Urata, 1840 to 1893, who was a shrine Shinto leader, a founder of a particular branch of Shintoism in the 19th century. And they're the Japanese equivalent to Druidry, nature lovers that work with nature spirits and the sacredness of place. Okay, now we come to our Jewish thinker, and it's Louis L. Snyder. Where's Judaism in this chart?
Extreme right.
Okay. Just synchronistic that, but yes,
You asked me.
on the extreme right, yes. Although if you look at it from here, it's the extreme left.
Yes.
Now he was. Where would he be? He would be probably in box 78, which is the Reformed Judaism and secular Judaism. I don't think Louis Snyder was a sort of Orthodox Jew going to synagogue all the time. I think he was more of a intellectual, secular Jewish thinker. And interesting enough, he studied and pioneered the study of nationalism. You know, he was a social scientist and a political theorist, so he would also be in the box 165 for political theory. And when I was doing my degree, you know, we all had to read him when we were writing essays on nationalism. And what is it that forms the idea of a nation? Again, it was a great intellectual Durkheim that thought through the sociology of group bonding. Durkheim was also Jewish and one of the founders of sociology, another great intellectual. It's this idea to belong, this wanting to belong to a club or a group, that seems to pioneer this idea. Okay, so that's that one. Any comments? Yeah, question.
Yes, because it makes me think that that's one of the coincidence, or maybe that's the bad word, because with the I've heard, for example, for the making of the Nation France,
Wait.
it's because of the wars. The people had to fight against each other. One took the power and got the territory, or they fight against abroad enemies, and that helped them to make a nation. So, what do you think about the part of worship in nation building? Or
Yeah, no, I'm not. I think Snyder does talk about this, and it's obvious as a historian. You know, we see nations come and go, and they're galvanised through military stuff. I mean, the British nation and the French co-invented each other by their 100-year wars. They were always fighting, and that made the French even more French and the English more English. And the same with the Scottish and the English who fought each other, and the English and the Welsh and the Irish, and it's the same with the Jewish and Palestinian people, in the sense they're locked into this to be more profoundly identified with being a Jew. I have to therefore hate the Palestinians because they're other, and vice versa. The Palestinian identity is formed around hating Jews and not being prepared to talk to them. And the same with the Lebanese. In Lebanon, you know, they're not particularly fond of the Jewish nation experiment, and so, on the whole, don't want to have anything to do with them. And it's illegal in Lebanon to, to have too much to do with the Jewish people. And so all these, like you say, this is a problem. I think that's what Putin has done in his regalvanizing of this idea of Russiahood. Only there it's rushing up against Ukrainianness. And the irony is that they belong to the same nation in a bigger sense, and yet now they're locked into this eternal death struggle, which is just utterly tragic. And they've, there've been a meeting in Italy this last week, I didn't mention that, giving Ukraine more weapons to fight Russia. I think we should approach this more philosophically, and there's a clue in the language. Nationhood it's to do with being born, and it's related to the Latin word natio, is to be born. And in the old universities of Europe, in Paris and Oxford and Bologna, as a student you go there, you're part of the nation where you're from. So the Scottish nation at the University of Paris would all have its own hall and its meals together and stuff, or the Italian nation. The natio was your birth community, the land you're born into. I'm Canadian nation because I was born there. I'm also British nation because my parents are British. And so we're all born, and the problem is we are always born of some specific woman somewhere, and man. And so to be born is to become different and other than others who are being born. But, I think, my research is into past life experience and in between lives. I've read and studied the literature on near-death experiences and deep hypnotherapeutic experiences, taking people back to pre-birth. It seems to me that science, I think, can now prove, as far as I'm concerned, that the soul comes from elsewhere. It doesn't just start at birth. It comes from a transcendental place. We can call it heaven. In Buddhism, there are terms for this, in Hinduism as well. And I think we can begin to study that scientifically. Psychologists are doing this, transpersonal psychologists. And the thing is, we all come from the same place, the same heaven world. We're just born into a particular birth stream. I don't think that should then make us hate people in other birth streams. but rather honour that, because that could be any of us. You know, we can have lives in any continent, any culture, any language stream, and they're all sacred as far as I'm concerned. And it was Plato who first put in writing this near-death experience when he wrote in the Republic about the myth of in Athens, because this chap came back to life after dying on a battlefield and told what it was like in the afterlife, where you go when you die. And I think it was a true story because he had actually had that experience. We now know that actually many people have it. So I think this should teach us humility. And so that's why I believe in internationhood or internationalism, as Bentham coined the word. Bentham was an honorary citizen of France here, a Freemason and a great thinker in London, who founded my University of London. And he coined the phrase international, which means we all are actually international, in fact. And I look forward to a world where we can have, the UN and other international bodies give some kind of world citizenship to people. I think we should all have like a world citizen's passport. We can travel and work freely, like the EU, but for the planet as a whole. So I don't know, Lewis Snyder, yes, great man. Then we come on to our next, who is from Java, and was a Javanese feminist, an Indonesian activist and writer, considered a national hero in Indonesia. I had here visiting an Indonesian girl a couple of years ago who taught me a lot about, in contemporary Indonesian culture. She would no doubt have heard of this woman, Raden Ayu Kartini, also called Raden Ajeng Kartini, born in April 21st, 1879, died 1904. So, we honour this amazing Indonesian pioneer. And I think she was Muslim, as was my visitor here from Indonesia. Indonesian Muslims are just amazingly intelligent and sophisticated. She helped me work on about 4 or 5 websites and helped design all kinds of things when she was visiting. So, honour to the Indonesian Muslim women. Okay, then we come to our pagan column. Oh, where would that be? Where's our Muslim ones?
This is the green.
The green
Yes.
boxes, yeah. And which branch would she be in, do you think?
Not Sunnism, not Shiism, not Ismaili, not Wahhabism, but besides, I don't know.
Well, I think probably the philosophical box, sort of Muslim intellectuals that transcend particularism and are more open and internationalist in their outlook. She strikes me as she'd be in the Islamic philosophy column 84. Yeah, I think. But anyway, well found. Right, now we come to our pagan of the day. And today we celebrate Ptah-hotep. Ptah-hotep was an ancient Egyptian vizier. He's one of my heroes. And he lived in the 25th century BC. Like 4,500 years ago, there was a chap called Ptah-hotep. And his name comes from 2 names. Ptah, the god of creativity, building, construction, getting stuff done, like you were saying, practical stuff, And Hotep, which means peace. Hotep is the Egyptian word for peace. and it's such a great name to have, Ptah-hotep. It meant the one who brings the peace of Ptah, the peace that comes from the great creator. And the Egyptians believed that Ptah actually created this whole universe. When we look out at the stars or the mountains or the hills or the forests, it's Ptah that did the creation. And so that's why we have a certain degree of piety. Anyway, he was a real chap, and he's credited with authoring a book called The Instructions of Ptah-hotep, a piece of Egyptian wisdom literature which has come down. So scholars have been able to translate this, and we have the text. He wrote this to instruct his son, and others, and he's buried at Saqqara. His tomb is in near the first stepped pyramid of ancient Egyptian culture, and he may well have helped design it because he was, he was also an architect. So yeah, an amazing chap, and his memory lives on. So we honour him today. Thank you. And where would he be?
He's a kind of a Freemason father or grandfather.
Yeah. The Freemasons like Ptah. They go back, and there are lodges in Egypt. It's even now it's quite a big thing. Napoleon brought Freemasonry to Egypt, and brought it back to Egypt, and it's still going in Egypt. And I'm sure there's a lodge of Ptah somewhere in Memphis, which was his town. Memphis, which is,
I guess you have some antique.
where would that be?
Primal Egyptian.
Yeah. So that's box number 4, Primal Egyptian. Yeah, he'd be in that box, right? Okay, then we come to our cultural, artistic, scientific kind of column, and today we celebrate a German composer, George Frederick Handel, who's a beautiful classical composer, 1685 to 1759, who went with the Hanoverian monarchs, George the First, when he was offered the throne of England or Britain, and he brought Handel with him because he knew his work from Germany. And I've been to the house. There's a museum dedicated to Handel in Halle, which I visited. It's well worth going if you get a chance. And what I love about Handel is he was an international figure. So he was at home in Germany, trained in German music, helped inspire and influence both Beethoven and Mozart because he was honoured by them as a genius. But then he came to England, and we were really fortunate to have him. He produced some great works. He was like the royal composer for the king, and he did brilliant stuff. And to me, that's why I love Europe as a whole. We should be able to have great musicians, poets, artists, engineers, scientists go and travel and live in different countries, That was the beauty of the European Union ideal, which I hope my British colleagues will soon realise was a very good idea and get back in the swing of it. Once this general election is over and we get rid of this Tory party of corrupt ignoramuses, we can get back on mainstream. So anyway, Handel, we love him. Thank you. Then we come to our Hindu of the day. Oh, by the way, where would we put music and musicians? He was a Christian, but we'll put him in the music area.
Maybe in philosophy there is a music.
Yeah.
At the bottom.
It's 144, aestheticism. So that's kind of arts.
Ah, thank you.
Working with music, poetry, fine art, and so on. The sort of people that believe in